Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, we made it. NBA basketball is right around the corner. It's preseason, yeah, but you take what you can get. Now that we are in the time of the year to hoop, it is time for us to go over our predictions for the 79th NBA season. So like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and let's get right into it. Here are the Sweatshops predictions for the 2025 NBA playoffs, Eastern Conference edition. Before we get started, if you're looking for our Western Conference predictions, we released them last week, link in the upper right hand corner. That video was made before the Julius Randle Karl Anthony Towns trade, and that does change the rankings slightly. I'll drop a comment with the upgraded tiers on that video. On to this video though, remember injuries are on for this. I'm not going to try to predict random injuries to happen, but if someone is injury prone, I have to take that into account, and that is going to affect quite a few teams in these rankings, so keep that in mind. Let's start it off unfortunately with tier number 1, the Father Divine Have Mercy on Me tier. Every night before I go to bed, I pray to the Lord up above that Brooklyn Nets fans will know peace at one point in their lives. Throughout the last decade, they have been put into one of two horrid situations constantly. Either they're the fan of an overhyped super team, or they're the battered partner of a rebuilding franchise with none of their picks. The 2024-25 Brooklyn Nets are shaping up to be the latter part of that cycle. This franchise has a chance to be one of the worst teams of the last decade. There is not a single bright spot on this roster. There's non-dark spots. Nick Claxton is a solid defensive big. Cam Johnson's a good shooter. Hammer the over on Cam Thomas's season points per game average and the under on his assists. Maybe Ben Simmons is finally back to normal. There is not a single thing about this roster that I'm overly optimistic about, and if there is any justice in this world, Adam Silver will trade everyone on the roster to a team that actually wins, and Brooklyn will get relegated to the G League so this front office can go a single election cycle without making a catastrophic franchise move. Let's go to the next tier, not that much better. We have the Jack Harlow's discography tier, varying degrees of ass. Not gonna spend too much time on this tier whatsoever. Having the Pistons, Bulls, and Wizards not on the bottom tier is not a credit to them. It is a testament to how gut-wrenchingly terrible I think the Nuts are going to be this year. All these teams have about the same level of optimism as the Nets. They just got some more solid role players, thus leading to them having some slightly higher floors. I'm also a little more optimistic about each of these teams' young talent. The Nets got 2 young players with the arrow pointing up. All of these teams got 3 or more. Still, probably gonna be ass. Next up, we got the we're trying to tank but these other teams are too bad tier. All 3 of these franchises would love a season that ends with them in the top 5 in the upcoming draft. Unfortunately, the bottom of this conference is so sorry. One of these teams is gonna fail upwards into a play-in berth. Let's go from the bottom to the top. Click the video in the upper right hand corner for my extensive thoughts, but to make a long story short, I really like the Charlotte Hornets. If we assumed health, I think they could go as high as the 6th seed. No, I am not joking, but if we are treating this like real life with injuries on, 2 of the Hornets' 3 most important players are probably going to miss half the season due to injury. If Brandon Miller has a superstar jump, maybe they can still reach those heights without LaMelo and Mark Williams, but betting on him doing that next year would be ridiculous, even though I do think he'll reach that level at some point in his career. Toronto, honestly a really solid roster. I'm really optimistic about this team, but unless RJ Barrett and or Scotty Barnes becomes an all-star level offensive player, the lack of offensive creation on this team is too severe for me to trust that they can really jump over some of these more proven contenders. And finally, the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young by himself is pretty much a guaranteed top 10 defense. You add on to that a potential Jalen Johnson breakout year and some solid depth, and you can see why I have them this high. On the other side of the Trae Young Atlanta Hawks coin though, they could end up as the worst defense in the league by season's end. Next up, we have the infirmary tier and Cleveland. Let's start with Cleveland. The reason I have Cleveland in this tier is because I think this is about where they fall talent-wise, 6th best in the conference. They have a really solid roster, but the fit has always been questionable to me. I mean, they got 2 undersized guards who are at their best with the ball in their hands and 2 bigs who are at their best in the paint, all in the starting lineup. That fit is just too weird for me to really put a stake in the ground for them. They have enough talent for me to believe they can avoid the play-in tournament, but other than that, their ceiling is round 2 for me. The other 2 teams in this tier, Miami and Philly, if you can guarantee me health, these 2 teams have a chance to give the team I have in the number 1 spot some issues. Philadelphia on paper is just about as good as anyone in the league. And Miami has proven over the last 5, 6, 7 years, no matter what, if you get them to the postseason, they can give anyone in the East a run for their money. But you can't guarantee me health. I'd trust someone with 1,000 bottles of baby oil to give me a massage before I trusted the health of Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Jimmy Butler. So when you factor that in, they fall at about 7th and 8th for me. Next up, we have the fighting for second tier. These are all contenders. I have them a small step below the top tier in the West. These teams I think all have a chance to finish as the number 1 seed in the East and could possibly upset the team I got in number 1, but there are still 1 or 2 things holding me back from saying, okay, these guys are in that upper crust with Boston. I'm done dancing around their name. Surprise, surprise, Boston is number 1. But let's go through this tier first, starting at the bottom. Milwaukee has Giannis and Dame. They haven't fit together yet, but still. Giannis, Dame, and a Chris Middleton who looked like he was back to near prime form in the playoffs. I got them at the bottom of this tier because they are old, injury prone, and Doc motherfucking Rivers, but based on talent alone, you gotta give Milwaukee a chance to reach the finals. Indiana. I said last year I was gonna have Indiana as the number 2 seed. This year, that was before some other teams made some moves and Boston looked as dominant as they did. But still, I really like what the Pacers are building. To me, this is the perfect Tyrese Halliburton team. With a hopefully healthy Halliburton season and half a season and off season of experience with Siakam on the roster, I think the Pacers could be really dangerous this upcoming year. After that, we got the New York Knicks. I will say, if anyone stops the Boston Celtics in the East, I think it's gonna be the Nova Knicks. The fit of their roster is just too... Jalen Brunson honestly may still be underrated in a lot of circles. I don't know if I'll ever finish my top 25 player rankings for this year, but still, spoiler alert, Jalen Brunson is the 7th best player in the league to me. And then on top of that, Mikal Bridges was an exquisite addition. He's gonna take a lot of the pressure off OG so he can be healthy come playoffs. Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, and Deuce McBride are all pretty solid high-level role players. All of them together just feels like the bizarro Celtics to me. My 2 drawbacks for this team were the Julius Randle fit and the 5 position is a little thin. And then the Knicks went and massacred 2 birds with 1 stone by trading Julius away for Karl Anthony Towns. Cat is the perfect offensive fit for this team. He can start at the 5 or play the 4 next to Mitchell Robinson. He can space the floor just about as good as any big man in the league or be the offensive focal point when Jalen Brunson's on the bench. It's not perfect. Cat is an okay defender and a little bit wishy-washy in the playoffs. Also, I think it's going to take them a second for them to get their chemistry right. By playoff time, I think they'll be elite for sure, but over the course of the year, I think they'll finish 3rd in the conference. One of the teams I got them behind is the Orlando Magic, the top team in this tier. The Orlando Magic I am extremely high on. They have the perfect defensive team for the modern NBA. No players under 6'4". With the addition of KCP, they have 2 of the 10 best perimeter defenders in the league in their starting backcourt, and a very good perimeter defender in Gary Harris backing them up. Like 4 switchable big frontcourt players, including maybe the most impactful defender in the league in Jonathan Isaac. And on top of that, pretty much everyone is young, full of energy, and outside of Isaac, not injury prone at all. This team could fall ass backwards into a top 5 defense and will probably be number 1. On top of this defense though, the offense of the Magic shows some promise. Their biggest issue last year was spacing and shot creation, admittedly 2 of the most important offensive qualities, but the aforementioned KCP should help improve their shooting. The arrow on pretty much everyone in their roster is pointing up, and I am extremely high on their 2 young stars. I'll be honest, even if everything goes well, I don't see Orlando having anything more than average spacing, but I was so impressed with Paolo and Franz's playmaking and scoring last year, especially with the lack of spacing they had, that I believe if they improve as much as I think they can, we could be looking at 2 All-NBA team finishes and maybe even a top 5 MVP vote for Mr. Paolo. Still, youth, and the fact that we haven't seen this production out of them yet got them a step below that number 1 spot, which is, yes, the Boston Celtics. Boston is the obvious favorite in the conference, even though I still think they got a bit lucky with injuries. It's not like they were barely winning these series last year. They lost 2 games in the East. And the best teams in the East are also injury prone, so even if they were hella injured last year, there's a good chance they could be injured again this year. Boston has everything you'd want out of a championship favorite. Top 5 player in the league, debatable to me, but check. Top 15 second best player, again, in my opinion, on the edge. much, but still check. Versatile two-way role players, check. A good coach, check. Playoff experience, check. And a championship pedigree, check, check, and check. I still am not quite as high on the Celtics as most Celtics fans, surprise, surprise. But having Boston anywhere lower than at the top of the conference seeding to start the year is asinine to me. But that is my list for the East. If you have watched this video all the way through, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed this content, go ahead and like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we release our next predictions and any other videos we have coming out. Comment down below what you think about the rankings, your hot takes, or what you strongly disagree with. There will probably be a lot. Share the video with a friend, and as always, stay sweaty, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.